Hey Will, how you doing? Let's get into it. I hope everyone's all doing well. We're going to just dive straight into the latest news that we've managed to scrape from the interwebs. Right, Will, the first one that grabbed us. Obviously, we talked about the other day with ChatGPT 5 coming out, and there's already a bit of a backlash going on.
Well, a little bit with some users. Have you had a chance to try out GPT-5 yet?
Yeah, I certainly have. Yeah, not in all its magic and glory. I'm sure there's lots more to do and try and explore.
I think this is a little bit of the point, is that we're now hitting this era where AI models are getting better, or the large AI models are getting better, but not dramatically, not like they were, not like every new release is a groundbreaking, new model for the average person using it. The ability to write blogs, or do copywriting, or even write code sometimes it's getting harder and harder to see like a difference between GPT-5 and say GPT-4o, and that's what we're also sort of seeing. So now users are like basing this kind of feedback on things like personality. And we're getting a bit of a backlash because GPT-5 doesn't have much of a personality, apparently. Again, I haven't really used GPT-5 a whole load. Again, for me, it feels a lot of the same as GPT-4. However, a lot of people report that it's a lot colder. It's not as friendly, and they miss it. So there's been a lot of backlash to the fact that OpenAI has actually then come back and said, well, we'll bring out GPT-4o and we'll monitor its usage, and we'll see how it goes about keeping it. Obviously, this is a little bit of an unfortunate backstep for OpenAI, but yeah, I think it goes to show that we're hitting a point now where AI models of this size are getting better, but not in a noticeable way for the average person. We're really like kicking the top ends of the benchmarks now, which won't apply to probably 95% of people using them.
And this is, of course, where like you were sort of mentioning, the differences are so minute, it's hard for people to notice, and the models are getting smaller, which again moves towards the direction that we hope things will move into with micro models and things like that, so you can have them on device. It's good that they're listening to the feedback, that they've enabled people to switch between the ChatGPT 5 and the previous model. It's a little bit like a lot of technology, isn't it, where you get iterative developments and changes. You look at the iPhone. I mean, they have to push out a new iPhone every September or October, whenever they do it. The difference is negligible, and people are tending not to sort of lots of people aren't always upgrading every year. They tend to hold on to their devices for a few years, don't they? So the differences aren't as stark as they possibly once were when they first came out. So yeah, interesting.
I was going to say, I think when GPT-4 came out, and even GPT 3.5, I mean, this was groundbreaking stuff that people in the world had never seen, couldn't believe what they were able to use, and that speed of development slows down. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, did a really interesting podcast which I was listening to, and within AI there's three walls to overcome, and he actually added a fourth, which was building the right products as well. And that's something that so you've got compute, that's a limitation of how good an AI can get. You have data, that's another one. You need good data to be able to train good AI, and how do you overcome a limit on the data that we actually have available? And then the third one is sort of algorithmic gains, like how can we adjust our architecture and our infrastructure algorithmically to improve these AIs. And like all the frontier labs are working on all three of those things, but he actually added a fourth one, which almost gives you a little insight into what's happening at OpenAI, which was building the right product to wrap it. You can have one thing like a chatbot where you can enter it, but how do you continue to build useful applications that wrap around these systems to make them useful to as many people in the world as possible? So I think that gives a really interesting insight into the direction that OpenAI is also going. Although trying to solve these other core AI problems, they're also putting a lot of time into how to actually build something useful. That might I don't know if I necessarily agree with that as a paradigm, but and it could come back and backfire if they're not focusing enough on the other improvement areas.
You touched on something there where he was talking about he wants to, make it as useful to as many people as possible. I think I read an article the other day about how they scaled back ChatGPT 5 slightly to what it could have been to make it more usable to as many people as possible. So this next iteration that they're working on, who knows what that means. So yeah, that was something I read, which I thought was quite interesting. That you sort of picked up on that his focus is very much, I guess, mass usage as much as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting because when your core mission is building AGI, which is quite a loose mission, what that sort of implies is that this AI will be good at everything. It'll be superhuman at everything. It will be better than at everything that we can do in every domain. And this can also be a classic of, you have to be wary that it doesn't turn into this jack of all trades, master of none thing as they're trying to scale up these systems and these towards like AGI. It's quite possible that it gets lost because it's trying to do too much. I do think there is a big place for, as we talked about in previous shows, specialist AIs. They're really good at one thing. They're small, they run on device, they do a fantastic job. They're more useful to people built in than one big AGI system. So again,
no, brilliant.
We're at such a frontier that we don't know.
No, for sure. Right, moving on. I think we've gone past the 5-minute mark. I keep forgetting to put the timer on. For those of you who followed us since the beginning, we tend to do each story about 5 minutes just to keep it short and snappy. Yeah, we've probably just blasted through that. So let's move on to the next story, which is GitHub will be folded into Microsoft proper as CEO steps down. And this is, what's his name? The CEO is Thomas Domk. I might pronounce that very badly.
See, I wasn't going to try and pronounce the name. I didn't want to make a.
So yeah, what's I mean, obviously you might go, oh yeah, what's the big deal about this? But what's your sort of take on it, Will?
Well, I think I mean, when we were talking just before, you were talking about how you didn't think it was particularly interesting, and maybe it's not. I think it speaks more towards Microsoft's position within the AI race and where they're trying to put themselves. They've actually had a lot of criticism recently because they are obviously big shareholders and funders of OpenAI's mission. And they've had criticism for this because they're the only sort of like big tech company that has put so many eggs into what is a third-party company. And well, not the only one, but they're probably the most well-known one. And instead of building out, instead of building out their own systems or putting all that money into their own systems, they put it into a third-party company. And this might backfire, So they've had a lot of criticism there. So they are making moves to try and bring it in-house with this. So GitHub, they acquired GitHub in 2018, I believe. Oh yeah, it says it in the article, 2018. And since then, it's been owned by Microsoft, but operated as a separate company. And now what they're doing is folding it into the main Microsoft business and making it Microsoft GitHub, or appears to be what they are doing. And this is part of an overall strategy to bring AI more in-house and to build out the AI coding tools within their business directly. So I think it's interesting because I think it's not because he stepped down particularly, but because what the business move is doing.
Yeah, it's that was it. I was going to touch on because there has been a few flashpoints recently between Microsoft and OpenAI. And like you touched on, they've put all their eggs in, well, not maybe all of them, but they've invested heavily into OpenAI. And I remember hearing a few weeks back how basically Sam's trying to renegotiate the deal that he originally struck with Microsoft over the revenue. Just trying to sort of try some information on it, but basically
Microsoft always had this like image problem. Sorry to interrupt. Has had this image problem where no one says they're going to use Microsoft GPT. It's always OpenAI's ChatGPT, and no one really knows what. Again, same with GitHub. GitHub is a standalone brand, and there's brand under GitHub as well. But not many people know that it's Microsoft owned, and this is a major brand issue because all the while Microsoft's picking up the bill. They're not getting used to, the company that's funding it actually owning it. Now, obviously, Microsoft see this as a problem.
It's almost like the it's very company they were investing is potentially going to be a major competitor to them, but I don't know how that's going to work out. But it's very odd how you negotiate a deal and then you try and sort of renege on it. It's like, well, that's the deal you signed. I don't know what you're moaning about, really. It's not a lot to be said. And then there was this other thing about OpenAI investing in doing something with windsurf. I think they bought windsurf for $3 billion, and that's the direct competitor to the Microsoft Copilot.
So again, this is an ongoing brand issue for Microsoft, because Microsoft has its own in-house AI team as well. They're trying to build out their own AI too, as well as being a massive funder and stakeholder in OpenAI. And it's a big problem when the CEO of the company that you are funding and picking up the bill for, which is the case, is now going out and trying to make acquisition deals for direct competitors to what you are doing. So Microsoft actually blocked that deal from happening. But you can see, obviously, behind the scenes, there is some bureaucracy going on to, between the OpenAI and Microsoft relationship. So, I know the news of a CEO stepping down isn't particularly interesting. I think it's definitely more behind the scenes of what Microsoft are doing as a business that's caused this to happen. That is the interesting story here.
And actually, Will, I just spotted something. I didn't realize this. By all accounts, there's an AGI clause. Apparently, their contract includes a key phrase: if OpenAI reaches AGI, Microsoft's access and revenue share end. And obviously, Microsoft wants that clause removed, but OpenAI refuses. So that is really interesting. Hence, why he's so gunning for AGI. But again, what is that definition? So we can clearly see why Microsoft are diversifying and building its own AI model and doing things. So this is really interesting.
It might prove to be a mistake to invest so heavily in a company instead of putting that money into your own basket. I think they are playing a little bit of damage control on it.
Interesting. Right. Lots to ponder, lots to think about. There's some boardroom battles going on there, and we've definitely gone past 5 minutes. So again, apologies, guys, but that might have been worth just diving a bit deeper into. So that's quite good. Moving on. The universal agent configuration file. This is not my bag. So, Will, I'm going to hand that over to you, but I'll probably ask you lots of stupid questions. So, as they say, there's never a stupid question.
In all honesty, I don't know if this is going to be the most interesting thing for people to listen to anyway, but it's directly attributed to the technical sort of AI coding world. If you are into development or software engineering and you use AI tools like Claude or Gemini CLI or Cursor, for example, they reference Cursor in this article, then you'll be familiar with the ability to provide your own version of a system prompt to that AI code base to code base. So when you first open up your code base, say it's for an app, you can run /init on Claude, and you can write your own system prompts for Gemini and Cursor rules as well. Essentially, what you can do is you can provide extra instruction for that code base, and you can say, this is how this is laid out. These are the commands you can run to do certain things. It basically gives a roadmap to AI agents, to have a look around that code base. It's quite useful for sort of aligning with what you want to do. However, what's quite annoying is if you use multiple coding tools, for example, you might use Cursor and then your usage runs out on Cursor, so you put up Claude Code, and then that runs out and you use Gemini CLI, or you might use Gemini CLI for planning and another agent for different tasks because it's better. They all have their own configuration files. So when you're using it in a code base, you have to write 1, 2, 3 configuration files to help each AI agent because they don't talk to each other. Now, this is obviously just a bit of a problem because they all have their own nuance. It takes time. It's duplication, if not anything else. So that is the backstory behind this, which is agent.md. It's a proposal for a specification to unify how AI coding tools talk to each other through just one singular agent.md file. And they're going out of the way to push this as a specification for all the AI coding tools to adopt. I think it's a really good idea because, again, writing many configuration files and setups in a code base is annoying and unnecessary. It always feels unnecessary. Whether it gets adopted depends on what the tools that are using it will adopt. And I think they will, because ultimately it makes the user experience better.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's not much more to it. But if you're into software engineering, I think this will be a welcome bit of news to you, because it's really annoying writing many configuration files. So one would be lovely.
Is this dependent on those platforms accepting this as a format, or is this a format that people can use now?
This will be a format that has to be accepted. It's a proposal for a specification. Again, like any protocol that you have within the tech world, a famous one that has been adopted by everybody is the MCP protocol, the Model Context Protocol. That was proposed by Anthropic, of all things, and it gives a way for large language models to interact with other third-party services, a bit like an API, if you like. And that was a protocol that was proposed by Anthropic and released by Anthropic. Other providers didn't have to use it, but it turns out it was a big gain for all tools to use. So this is much the same thing. They're proposing a spec for it, agent.md. Whether it's successful depends wholly on if the tools want to use it.
Perfect. Brilliant. Let's move on, mate.
100%.
So I think we're on to the Alexa. Yeah, the Alexa story.
I thought this was until I read it. I thought this was massively like clickbait. I was a bit confused for a minute, but Alexa got an AI brain transplant. I honestly misread it as Alexa got a human brain transplant. I was like, what?
Yeah, but this isn't like a massively crazy story or anything. I think it's more of a consumer story, isn't it? It's in the New York Times. Long short of it is, they're just trying to marry the conversational skills of generative AI chatbots with the daily task that the old Alexa did very well at. So I think it's just trying to be more conversational and useful, because I don't know about you, but every time I use Alexa, but it tends to be, Alexa, what time is it? Alexa, play some music. Alexa, what's the weather going to be like? I can't think of why other reason I speak to Alexa for, because you can never, get really good answers out of, if you ask like, I don't know, some random questions. I've always found it as a bit rubbish. So
yeah, it's interesting. We haven't seen a huge rollout of like AI powered voice assistant. Well, we've seen a few, but I don't think it's hit main. Like something like Alexa, a lot of people have those, technical or non-technical, and a lot of people have Siri, and a lot of people use Siri, technical, non-technical, and there seems to have been a bit of a slow, maybe it's just me, a slow rollout to these systems. And I think that comes down to the fact that these systems are unwieldy, expensive. Again, this new version of Alexa is only released under Alexa Plus, so you got to pay for it, and that's because it's just unfeasible to give this system a system like a generative AI that speaks in real time and has voice. It's unrealistic to give it away for free. So no longer, it's interesting because this might pose a future issue. Like you have to buy an Alexa, and they're not that cheap. I know the smaller ones are quite reasonable, but you still have to buy this technology, and then when you get it, you can't even use it for free, and you can't even use the best version for free without subscribing to it. I think this again sets maybe a direction that this is going, but yeah, other than that, it's not meant to be that good. Apparently it is a first version. I'm sure it will improve. There's as the article states, they're fundamentally different systems. So the old Alexa, the one that we're all used to, speaks on a deterministic level. It's based on rules and algorithms, and that's how it answers. It doesn't have any generative AI in there, and generative AI is a completely different system with its own complete set of different problems. So actually engineering the two systems, you've got to maintain two. One that the free users use, which is wildly different in architecture to the one that the paid users have to use, which is again wildly different. So it's quite interesting how consumer level technology is trying to implement it, and I think rather unsuccessfully.
Yeah, you know what? It's a really, really, really good point, because I think there's two big points there. Is how you touched on there is the consumer tech feels so backwards and so rubbish compared to like even the Ava that we're building. You can have conversations and interrupt, and it's natural, and it's all the rest of it, and it flows. So the consumer tech just seems so behind the times, which is really interesting, and I think you sort of touched on maybe some of the reasons why. Equally, I think it's interesting how, from a consumer's perspective, you go and buy a product, you don't really want to then go and subscribe to something else as well. It's not like a digital product where the expectation from the consumer is, oh yeah, there might be a freemium version, but there's going to be a better version if I subscribe. I get that. But for consumers going out there to buy a product, a physical thing, for them, there is a clear barrier, isn't there? Or a sticking point where they go, well, I've just paid for this. Why am I having to pay for a better version? It's like, well, surely it should just be built into it. So that's probably the reason why, like we touched on, is why it's lagging in terms of the consumer tech. Isn't that good?
I was gonna say, if you think about it, these, if you're wrapping it under Alexa Plus, right, that can't be too expensive, or people just won't buy it. So it's got to be $20 tops, which is still too expensive for most people. Having bought the Alexa, they want a cheap subscription, a bit like they sell Amazon Music really cheap alongside Alexa, because you've already bought the device. So it's got to be a cheap subscription. But then these AI models and these generative systems, they aren't cheap to run. That's why you have OpenAI charging $200 for their premium subscription. Same thing with Google. You have massive price tags on these, not because they're greedy, maybe there's an element of that, but mostly because these systems are just simply that expensive to run. So again, if Amazon comes out and releases this Alexa Plus generative voice, real-time voice, it's going to be a loss leader. I mean, they're going to make a loss on it because the technology isn't quite there. It's probably why there's a massive delay in Siri coming out. You buy an iPhone and drop $1,000 on a phone, you're not going to want to pay for Siri.
No,
they might try, but that's why there's a delay, because we don't have the quality there yet to run it on device, or run it cheaply enough that it can just be sold as an add-on to what you've already, the purchase price of the phone covers it. So it is interesting. I don't think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying to put this technology into consumer hardware now, because it will get small enough or it will get cheap enough that it can do that. But this is a fun thing, because the consumers still have to use this like subpar, poor version of it, or pay a lot of money for it. It's like the first time that the consumers are not really getting polished products. They're just getting sort of half-baked things that they promise will be really good in the future, and they will. But it's just, again, I think a strange mindset for, especially if you're not very familiar with AI, or you're not particularly technical. It's an odd position to be in, because you probably don't understand why.
And again, is this where micro models and on-device AI models come into their own?
I think that's probably where I would love to think that's where it end up. I know Apple are banking on device models. They've talked a lot about it. I think that's probably where the future will be. But again, we're a long way off it being like feasible, that you don't have to have a really high-end phone or a really high-end laptop, or you don't even have to think about the installation steps of how you get a model like that onto your phone. That's a whole big thing. Like, how do you actually run it? Most people wouldn't know where to begin, because it's still quite technical. But yeah, I think on-device AI is going to be the future.
Interesting, mate. I think we'll wrap it up. Is that anything else you want to sort of cover off?
No. What about you? Anything else you want to cover off?
I guess we can share with the audience. With Ava Mind, we are working on. Sorry, my brain freeze. The music. So we're doing having a slight UI work in terms of how because we've got these guides which you can read, and there's audio versions. So we're going to have more audio, I guess, experiences. So you'll have the audio reflection guides. We'll have the for initially we'll have the sleep playlist, so relaxing music. But again, we'll introduce more playlists. So I think I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be a really nice feature. It's a feature I would use as a feature I can give it to my kids and just say, hey, just listen to this. So that's really, really good. I'm really excited for that. I think that's going to be one of the premium features we're going to be adding to the suite of premium tools that we're working on. And I think that's our focus, isn't it? It's really to start building out the value proposition for our premium offering. We've got a good baseline for everybody to be able to use Ava Mind for free. But we're now sort of focused on building out those sort of premium experiences and premium features from audio reflections, music for sleep, yoga, meditation, whatever it is. Plus, we're going to be looking at health data. We're going to be sort of plugging in. I'm giving away too many of our too much of our roadmap, so I won't say too much more. But we're just trying to sort of build that value into that premium product. So that's where we're at. So that's quite exciting.
It certainly is. I think I've nothing to add. I think you summarised it well.
Perfect. Brilliant. All right, guys, we're going to love you and leave you. We'll catch up with you tomorrow, and I hope you all have an amazing day. Take care.
Catch you tomorrow.